Now playing in theaters is The Blackening. This is a socio-political horror comedy. Is that the right thing to call it? Basically, it is a spoof of Cabin in the Woods horror movies, but with an African-American twist, where it really skewers a lot of stereotypes. It skewers a lot of perception. It speaks toward the how an African American in America feels about themselves, each other, Caucasian society, American society as a whole, and people get killed. So it's an interesting mix. Now, I had seen the trailer for it, and when the trailer started, I was just like, oh, this looks terrible. This looks like another scary movie. And even while I was watching this movie as it was going along, I was like, oh God, is this going to be another scary movie kind of thing where it's just really over the top and not subtle? And no, it's actually better than that. When I first started seeing the trailer, as I said, it looked bad, but then as the trailer went, I'm like, well, that actually looks kind of funny. And it was. I didn't think this was great. I think partly, clearly, I'm not the real honed-in target audience for this film. I think this will speak toward African Americans a lot more clearly than it did me. I knew there was a lot of references that I wasn't getting about, musicians or sports people or TV people or cultural people that I hadn't heard of. But I got a lot of what it was saying, and I don't disagree with much of what it was saying. And it was interesting when it's trying to be a horror thriller. It actually successfully does that. It's funny. It's silly. It's not too gory, but there's a little bit of that in there. So if you're a little concerned about not wanting to see a horror movie, that's got horror elements, but honestly, I'm not one of these guys who, whenever somebody talks about something that's salacious or gory, they're like, yeah, you can see that on the news. You can't. But if you watch any police procedural show these days, a lot of what they convey on those shows, at least verbally or visually, I'm like, or if you watch like The Walking Dead or anything, I'm shocked at what you can see on TV and cable now. This is not even the level of that. So it's not like what I call probing the wound. It's not like a Lucio Fulci movie. It's like a slasher movie at times, but it's this balance of comedy and what's this movie about anyway? About an hour and a half, which I appreciate. This movie is about a group of friends, former college friends, who are reuniting after, I guess, 10 years for a Juneteenth celebration in a cabin in the woods. That was their first mistake. And they discover that some entity there has put this board game in the game room with a very offensive-looking face on it that's called The Blackening, and it's basically asking them to answer questions about black culture and pop culture, and if they answer them wrong, somebody will be killed by an arrow that flies out of nowhere. And occasionally we see a masked, it almost looks like a zipper mask, but it's not, a masked individual who's stalking them. So it's a stalk and slash thing. It's a comedy amongst friends and relationships and culture and society and political comment, and it's a comedy. So my reaction to it wasn't as funny as I hoped it would be. I thought it took a bit of time to get going plot-wise as far as the murder thing goes. You get a little right up front to set the tone, and then it's getting to know all the characters, and eventually it gets back to that. I didn't find it as funny as it was trying to be, but I did find it amusing. So for me, I thought it was okay. Again, took my mother to see this, didn't tell her what we were seeing, didn't think she'd probably care for it, and she liked it, I think, the most out of all of us who went. So so somebody can walk into this blind and have a really good time. So if you're just looking for a decent comedy, there's that. If you're looking for a horror spoof, it's pretty decent. And I did laugh out loud a few times. So that's more than I can say for a lot of full-on comedies. So in theaters now, The Blackening.